Hello, welcome everyone. Good morning. We have Adam Schwartz here, who is a Director of Technical Services for EMEA at Mongo, and he'll be doing strange cases from the field.
Thank you, Morgan. Thank you, Morgan. Thanks. Good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to be here with you. Have you or your team ever had to troubleshoot performance issues in your database? Show of hands. Okay. And was it sometimes difficult to know how to tackle those performance problems? Yeah, that's been our experience as well. Sometimes it can be quite challenging. Today, I'm going to talk to you about strange cases from the field and take you behind the scenes of two real-life MongoDB support cases where the cause of the issue and the solution were not obvious. Hopefully this talk will expand your thinking on how to approach these kinds of problems and give you a better idea about the support process at MongoDB. My name is Adam Schwartz. I'm Director of Technical Services in EMEA, based out of Tel Aviv. I've been in support at MongoDB for about 7 years now. I'd also like to mention my colleague, Eric Sommer, who unfortunately couldn't be here today. Eric is a senior escalation engineer in EMEA and is co-author of this talk. The first thing I need to tell you is that problem cases are rare. The overwhelming majority of database deployments work as designed. Many of our customers never need to open a support case. They typically engage support to get technical advice and ask a variety of questions. When customers do experience a problem, many cases have straightforward resolutions. While our customers learn from every case they open with support, the cases that are not simple to crack can teach them even more. The trajectory of those strange and atypical cases is interesting and educational. These cases shed more light on MongoDB internals and on the mechanics of support itself. As I said, every customer engagement with support is a learning opportunity. Customers have the chance to work with MongoDB experts. Our engineers have rich educational backgrounds, from autodidacts to PhDs. They've worked in numerous roles across a variety of domains. They have years of dedicated MongoDB experience, and they leverage the institutional knowledge of literally hundreds of their support colleagues. Also, our support engineers collaborate with product and engineering on a daily basis. Support cases can exhibit the skill and creativity of our engineers, and also the wisdom of their solutions. When customers work with support engineers on a case, we share our findings, our analyses, our reasoning, and as we progress the case, customers are exposed to MongoDB support processes and methodology. This enables our customers to collaborate with us to achieve the best possible outcomes in the shortest amount of time. Let me talk more about the support methodology. One helpful way of describing this methodology would be to call it a diagnosis and remediation loop. The first step is the analysis. Once we've arrived at an accurate problem description, we analyze the issue, reason through the facts, and form a hypothesis about what is causing the problem. The next step is the mitigation. Now we propose and communicate a resolution to the problem that best fits the hypothesis. Next comes the evaluation. Together with the customer, we assess the effectiveness of the remediation. If, under the same conditions, the problem goes away, we're done. On the other hand, if the defect persists, we go back and reanalyze the problem, starting the cycle over again. Now I'll walk you through two real-life cases that illustrate this methodology. Our first case today presented as a production down of a gaming customer's application. The customer noticed that MongoDB response times were getting slower and slower just before the outage. Analysis showed that the slowness started within the hour they launched the new version of the game. Until the launch, operation times were fast. We found that the new version of the game exhibited different database write characteristics and that the database was now experiencing what is called write ticket resource exhaustion. This is a sign that existing write operations are taking longer to execute, which causes the new incoming operations to be queued. But exhaustion of write tickets is only a symptom. Where is the bottleneck? Why did the writes slow down? Our first hypothesis. Analysis showed that the database was performing memory-intensive aggregation queries. Aggregations need to allocate blocks of memory to hold the results of each stage. In some circumstances, this can cause memory fragmentation, which can lead to slow memory allocations. If the database is also experiencing memory pressure, that could explain the slow writes. So we look further, and we found that the metric showed that resident memory never exceeded 70%. So that meant that there was still sufficient memory available. So even if the aggregations did cause fragmentation, the ample available memory meant that the fragmentation was insufficient to cause these slow writes. So this hypothesis was refuted, so we started the cycle over again. Hypothesis number 2. Further analysis showed that despite the sufficient available memory, the process was swapping. And swapping surely slows things down. This was very unexpected. Ordinarily, swap is not used unless the system is under memory pressure. In this case, the memory was not scarce, yet there were writes to the swap partition. Unfortunately, we didn't have time to investigate the reason for the swap usage here. The customer was down, and we needed to act quickly. So as always, we prioritized restoring the customer's deployment over any investigation, so we simply disabled the swap. The result was that the system became stabilized and the workload was fast and they were no longer down. However, we were still seeing slow writes. So on to the third hypothesis. More analysis showed that the rate of writes to the cache was extremely high. It was actually higher than the use case of this customer warranted. Perhaps the eviction of the dirty data from the memory cache to the file system cache was not fast enough. Perhaps the default number of eviction threads was too low to evict the dirty data quickly enough. That could definitely lead to a slowdown. Our mitigation was to quadruple the number of eviction threads. This fixed the issue completely. The operations became fast and response times acceptable. Let me say that it is exceedingly rare to ever have to tweak the storage engine internals at this level. Customers don't need to think about these kinds of remediations. However, this particular case, our analysis informed by our experience pointed to this remediation as the simplest, fastest, least obtrusive way to get the customer back up. So what do we learn from this case? Aside from learning about memory needs of aggregations and that faster cache writes may necessitate a more aggressive eviction strategy, we also learned about the appropriateness of swap. If a system's need for extra memory is only a one-off or is rare, then occasional reliance on swap can help and is even recommended. But if swap is used as a crutch, as a systematic workaround for an under-provisioned instance, then swap should not be used. In those circumstances, swap usage will only prolong a period of bad performance. Instead, it will be better not to use the swap, get a quick out-of-memory alert, and then appropriately provision the instance. As a result of this case and a bunch of others like it, we made a product improvement. Swap is now disabled on all Atlas instances of the M40 tier and above. Next case. The second case today is for an on-premises customer. The customer reported that database operations got slower and slower until they had to reboot. Analysis showed that there were no obvious changes to the characteristics of the database in the period leading up to the incident. And even though the rate of operations was increasing over 2 weeks before, the instance was not under-provisioned. We found that database writes were being severely and intentionally throttled due to the replication subsystem having activated the flow control feature. Replication to the secondaries was falling too far behind. Flow control acts like a pressure release valve, slowing the writes to the primary, and this takes pressure off the downstream secondaries and helps reduce the replication lag. But the engagement of flow control is only a symptom. Where was the bottleneck? Why can't the replication keep up? Hypothesis number one. The metric showed an increase in network errors, which could indicate the deployment was suffering from network congestion. As this is a deployment on the customer premises, we asked the customer to run a battery of tests to check for the network issues in more detail. While some issues were found, they were not deemed significant enough to cause the replication lag observed. So this hypothesis was incomplete, so we kept thinking and we kept looking. Second hypothesis. Other metrics pointed to a storage bottleneck. So we did some more analysis, and we found that there were periods of queuing and periods of 100% disk utilization. However, these periods of slow disk performance did not correlate in time to the slow writes we observed, nor to the growth of the replication lag. We therefore concluded that the disk was adequately provisioned for this workload, that the configured IOPS were sufficient for the storage, and this could not account for the issues we were seeing. So this hypothesis was refuted, so we kept looking and thinking. At this point, we consulted with experts on the server engineering team. They informed us that a combination of seemingly random disk slowness coupled with a small number of network errors could be indications of a known TLS session authentication issue. This problem surfaced in a particular version of the LDAP library on a specific flavor and version of Linux that this customer was running. The LDAP issue could lead to authentication delays, which are masked as network errors. This in turn would cause operations to queue and cause the symptoms that we were seeing. Again, this kind of problem is also exceedingly rare, but our support team knows the appropriate remediation if the issue happens to arise. Our mitigation here was simple. It was just to replace the reentrant version of the LDAP library with the non-reentrant version. Once the customer made the switch, the issue was resolved and the operations were no longer slow. So what did we learn from this case? Sometimes different kinds of errors are very hard to distinguish. The LDAP issue manifested itself in such a way as to look like a lower level network issue. But we also learned we could improve MongoDB metrics to better differentiate between two similar but different kinds of problems. In order to enhance our diagnosability going forward, we improved the product. We added more metrics around the TLS LDAP calls so that we can much more easily identify the source of errors in the future. There are many takeaways to these cases, but I'd like to just stress three. The mission of support at MongoDB is to make customers successful. I hope I showed you how we leverage our broad and deep knowledge, our experience with thousands of customers, and our position within the MongoDB engineering organization to arrive at the best possible solutions in the shortest amount of time. I also hope that by taking you through our incomplete, refuted, very incorrect hypotheses on these cases, that you got to see a little bit of our humility and our intellectual honesty that we bring to the support process. While most of the time, the first hypothesis we posit is actually correct, it's not always the case, but we're not really wedded to these ideas just because we thought of them or because our experience says that this is the most probable answer. No. We evaluate each theory on its own merits and test the most appropriate hypothesis based on the evidence of the case. Lastly, I need to stress that we could not bring these cases to resolution without working together with our customers. Our customers describe the issue that they're seeing. They provide a general timeline of events. We work together to complete the problem description and to collect the data. We implement the solution. And finally, we evaluate that remediation together. Our customer collaboration is based on trust and mutual respect, and this is what enables us to resolve the issues. And although poetry is not common at a conference like this, let me share a poem that I wrote to sum up this talk. Okay? To suboptimal execution, there is a technical solution. Supports thoughtful constitution, can yield a clever resolution. Okay. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure speaking with you.